Ma'am, you need to leave this property.
Excuse me, I live here.
The homeowner reported someone trespassing. You don't understand?
I am the homeowner. This is my house.
The caller said the owner is an elderly.
You can't do this. I know my rights. These words, spoken with unwavering resolve, would echo from body camera footage and become the fulcrum upon which a decorated police officer's career was shattered. This is the documented record of an incident on the evening of April 12, 2023, at the entrance of a prestigious gated community in Atlanta, Georgia. A 14-minute confrontation, born from baseless prejudice, pitted Dr. Evelyn Reed, a highly respected head nurse, against Officer Ryan Miller of the Atlanta Police Department. The encounter, captured in its entirety by Officer Miller's own body cam and the community's high-definition CCTV system, would culminate in his summary dismissal from the force and a landmark civil rights lawsuit settled for exactly $3.5 million. Before the flashing lights and accusations, however, there was only the quiet hum of an engine and the profound exhaustion that follows a life saved. Dr. Reed had just completed a grueling 12-hour shift in the intensive care unit at Emory University Hospital. The sterile, antiseptic scent of the hospital still clung faintly to her scrubs as she navigated the familiar route home, her mind replaying the delicate procedures and critical decisions of her day. Her luxury sedan was a cocoon of tranquility, a space she had earned through years of relentless dedication and academic excellence. The soft glow of the dashboard lights illuminated a face etched with fatigue but also with the deep satisfaction of a job expertly done. As she turned onto the private road leading to her residence, the manicured lawns and soft landscape lighting promised a well-deserved sanctuary. She pressed the button on her remote, the heavy iron gates beginning to part, completely unaware that a patrol car idling in the shadows was about to turn her sanctuary into a stage for a career-ending mistake. The high-intensity beams of Officer Miller's patrol car sliced through the evening calm, pinning Dr. Reed's sedan in a harsh, interrogative glare. The CCTV camera mounted on the gatepost, a silent, unblinking witness, captured the moment Miller exited his vehicle. His movements were not those of an officer conducting a routine check. They were proprietary and aggressive, the swagger of a man who believed he owned the space he occupied. His personnel file, which would later be scrutinized by Internal Affairs, contained 3 prior complaints of overly aggressive stops, all involving minority drivers, but none had ever resulted in disciplinary action. This time, however, the digital record would be irrefutable. He approached her driver's side window, his hand resting casually, almost menacingly, on the grip of his service weapon. He rapped his knuckles sharply on the glass, a sound that echoed in the quiet cul-de-sac. Dr. Reed lowered the window, the scent of the manicured hedges mixing with the sterile air from her car. Before she could speak, he began. His voice, captured with stark clarity by his body cam's microphone, was laced with an immediate and baseless accusation. The official transcript notes his failure to introduce himself or state the reason for the stop, a direct violation of Department Protocol 4.11. He demanded her license and registration, snatching them from her steady hand with a dismissive flick of his wrist. She calmly stated, "Officer, as you can see, the address on my license is 1428 Willow Creek Lane, which is right there." She gestured toward the house, her garage door still half open. Miller barely glanced at the documents. In his mind, they were props in a lie. He had already constructed a narrative of criminality, and no evidence to the contrary could penetrate it. He leaned in closer, his face illuminated by her dashboard lights. A call came in about a suspicious vehicle casing the neighborhood. This car fits the description. The dispatch logs for that evening, cross-referenced by timecode with the body cam footage, show no such call. It was a complete fabrication, a flimsy pretext for his prejudice. Dr. Reed, whose entire career was built on assessing situations under extreme pressure, recognized his irrationality. She kept her voice even, her tone deliberately de-escalatory. "I can assure you, officer, there's been a mistake. I am a resident here. I have just returned from my shift at the hospital." Miller ignored her explanation entirely, his eyes scanning the interior of her luxury vehicle as if searching for contraband that would validate his suspicion. He saw the Emory University Hospital parking pass hanging from her rearview mirror and scoffed. He ordered her to step out of the vehicle, his command sharp and non-negotiable. Dr. Reed complied without protest, her movements measured and deliberate. She understood the precariousness of the situation. Her composure was her only shield. As she stood under the flashing red and blue lights, the expensive fabric of her scrubs a stark contrast to the unfolding ugliness, Miller began his interrogation. His questions were not designed to gather information, but to demean and intimidate. Who do you work for in this house? Are you a caregiver, a housekeeper? Each question was a microaggression, a verbal jab intended to put her in what he perceived to be her place. The CCTV footage, with its wide-angle view, captured the absurdity of the scene. A highly accomplished medical professional being treated like a criminal at her own front door.
She answered each question with unwavering dignity. "Officer, I do not work for anyone in this house. I own this house. My name is on the deed. I am the head nurse of the intensive care unit at Emory." The statement hung in the air, a fact so contrary to Miller's worldview that he simply could not process it. He laughed, a short, derisive sound. "A nurse? Right. And I'm the chief of police." He gestured for her to place her hands on the hood of her car. She refused, standing her ground. "I will not," she stated, her voice as firm as steel. "You have no probable cause to detain me, let alone search me. You are acting on a false pretext and are in violation of my Fourth Amendment rights." To further prove her point, she calmly retrieved her community access card from her pocket and held it up. This card provides entry to the pool, the clubhouse, and the gym. It is only issued to homeowners. Miller slapped it out of her hand, the small piece of plastic skittering across the pavement. He was losing control, his frustration mounting in the face of her unshakable logic and calm demeanor. The body cam recorded his breathing becoming heavier, his knuckles white as he clenched his fists. He saw her as defiant, not as a citizen asserting her rights. He unclipped his handcuffs from his belt, the metallic click echoing in the microphone. It was a sound that would seal his fate, but at that moment he believed it was the sound of his absolute authority. He was about to make an arrest, a catastrophic error from which there would be no recovery. What would you have done if you were in Dr. Reed's position? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. The metallic click of the handcuffs was not just a sound. It was a declaration of intent, the punctuation mark on his absolute authority. For Officer Ryan Miller, this was the final, inevitable stage of a script he had run countless times in his mind. One where his worldview, once challenged, would be brutally asserted through the application of force and the cold finality of incarceration. His internal monologue, a narrative later inferred by departmental psychologists who reviewed the hours of footage for the civil trial, was one of pure, unadulterated confirmation bias. Every piece of irrefutable evidence Dr. Reed had calmly presented, from her state-issued driver's license with the matching address, to her hospital credentials and her logical, articulate defense of her constitutional rights, was processed by his brain not as proof of her innocence, but as the elaborate and insolent deception of a criminal who believes she was clever enough to outsmart him. The high-definition lens of his Axon Body 3 camera, recording at 1080p, documented the subtle tic developing in his jaw, the almost imperceptible flare of his nostrils as his breathing quickened. He was no longer operating as an officer of the law. He had devolved into a mere enforcer of his own deep-seated prejudices. He jabbed a finger toward her, his voice dropping to a low, menacing growl intended for maximum intimidation. "You are obstructing a police investigation. You are trespassing on private property, and as of right now, you are resisting arrest. That's 3 separate charges. You are going to prison for a very long time." The community CCTV camera mounted on the stone gate post, a Panasonic WS1536 model known for its exceptional low light performance and wide dynamic range, captured the entire scene from a wide, damning, and completely objective angle. Its footage would later show Dr. Reed standing perfectly still, her hands held open and visible at her sides, a textbook portrait of non-aggression. It showed Officer Miller advancing on her, his posture aggressive, manufacturing a physical threat where none existed. Dr. Reed's voice, steady and clear as a bell, cut through his tirade with surgical precision. "Officer, you have identified no victim of this supposed trespassing. You have no warrant for any action. You have no probable cause. Your entire escalation is being recorded, and it is illegal." This final, factual statement, devoid of emotion, was the spark that ignited the powder keg of his fragile ego. He interpreted her calm as contempt. "Fine," he snarled, fumbling for his department-issued smartphone. "You want to play it this way? We'll get some more units down here. We'll get the canines. We'll tear this entire car apart." His thumb jabbed violently at the screen, initiating a direct call to the precinct dispatch, a move that bypassed the standard radio channel and signaled heightened urgency. The body cam audio immortalized his subsequent words, a tapestry of blatant lies woven to retroactively justify his illegal stop. "This is Officer Miller, badge 88421B. I need immediate backup at 1428 Willow Creek Lane. I have a non-compliant female, possible 1054, refusing to identify herself and matching the description of a residential trespasser. Suspect is becoming verbally aggressive and is a flight risk." The dispatch logs would later show there was no prior call, no description to match. He was creating the crime in real time to fit the suspect he had already convicted in his mind. The call was completed. The police were on their way. The radio static from his shoulder mic faded into the chirping of crickets, a sound that Officer Miller now registered as the soundtrack to his victory. The call was made. Backup was en route. He had faced down a defiant, non-compliant suspect who had attempted to use a fabricated story of wealth and status to escape justice. He had seen through the lie, asserted his authority, and was now merely waiting for the system to validate his actions. A smirk played at the corners of his mouth, a fleeting expression of pure, unadulterated triumph captured in high definition by the very device he believed was documenting his professional competence. He saw Dr. Reed not as a person, but as a problem now solved, a nail hammered back into place. He shifted his weight, the leather of his duty belt creaking, a sound of power and control. He was about to issue another command, perhaps to force her to her knees, to fully cement her subjugation before his colleagues arrived to witness his dominance. But the words never left his lips. The silence was broken not by him, but by her, and her voice, still impossibly calm, sliced through his self-congratulatory haze with the precision of a scalpel. "Officer Ryan Miller, badge number 884-21B, she began, her gaze lifting from his face to stare directly into the small black lens of his body camera. It was a disconcerting move, as if she were bypassing him entirely to speak to a future audience, to the permanent, unassailable record. "I'm informing you that your body camera is recording, as are my community security cameras, which stream in real time to a monitoring center and to my husband's cell phone." Miller let out a short, scornful laugh, the sound thin and sharp in the night air. It was another bluff, another pathetic attempt to grasp at a status she didn't possess. "Your husband?" he sneered, the condescension dripping from every syllable. "And who might that be?" He expected another lie, perhaps the name of a lawyer or a local businessman. He was prepared to mock it, to tear it down as he had torn down everything else she had said. Dr. Evelyn Reed paused for a single, calculated beat. The timing was perfect, designed for maximum impact. The flashing police lights cast alternating waves of red and blue across her face, but her expression remained a mask of serene composure. He is Federal Judge David Chen. The words did not land like a shout, but like the heavy, silent fall of a guillotine blade. The title, Federal Judge, echoed in the space between them, imbued with a weight that buckled Miller's entire reality. The camera lens documented the instantaneous physiological shift. The smugness vanished, replaced by a slack-jawed vacancy. The blood drained from his face, leaving his skin a pallid gray under the strobing lights. His pupils dilated, and the audio feed, so sensitive it could pick up the rustle of leaves 50 feet away, recorded the sudden, sharp intake of his breath, a gasp of pure, soul-crushing shock. His mind, which had been so certain just seconds before, was now a vortex of panic. It had to be a lie, a desperate last-ditch fabrication. But the unwavering certainty in her eyes, the sheer unadorned way she delivered the fact, screamed its truth. And then came the final devastating sentence that transformed the abstract threat into an immediate and unavoidable reality. And, judging by the text I just received, he has already contacted your precinct commander and is 2 minutes away. The world stopped. He was no longer the enforcer. He was the subject of an investigation that had already begun. The approaching sirens he had so eagerly anticipated were no longer coming for her. They were coming for him. The sirens were not the ones he had summoned. These were different, carrying a note of urgency that had nothing to do with backup and everything to do with damage control. The sound sliced through the manicured tranquility of Willow Creek Lane, growing from a distant wail to an immediate piercing cry in precisely 1 minute and 48 seconds. A timeline later confirmed by the synchronized clocks on all 3 recording devices. 2 vehicles turned into the cul-de-sac, their tires barely whispering on the pristine asphalt. The first was a standard APD patrol car, its light bar painting the expensive facades of the homes in frantic strokes of red and blue. The second was a dark, unmarked sedan that moved with an unnerving purpose. The patrol car's door opened and a man with sergeant stripes on his sleeve, Sergeant Peterson, emerged. His face, captured in stark detail by Miller's body cam, was a mask of professional concern. The look of a veteran supervisor arriving to manage a scene he already suspected had gone terribly wrong. But it was the man who stepped out of the unmarked sedan who instantly became the new center of gravity for the entire encounter. He was of average height, dressed in a simple polo shirt and slacks, yet he carried an aura of quiet, unshakable authority that dwarfed Officer Miller's manufactured bravado. Sergeant Peterson's body cam, which activated automatically the moment he opened his door, documents the exact frame where his eyes lock on to the second man, and his entire posture transforms. His shoulders, which had been squared and authoritative, subtly relaxed into a posture of deference. "Judge Chen," he said, his voice stripped of all police formality and replaced with genuine concern. "Sir, is everything all right? Is this your wife?" The question was a formality.
He had already processed the scene, the federal judge, the head nurse in her scrubs, the patrol car, and his own officer standing pale and sweating under the flashing lights. In that single moment, Officer Miller ceased to be the enforcer of the law. He became the incident. He was no longer a participant, but the problem itself, a liability whose cost was already being calculated in the sergeant's mind. Judge Chen simply nodded, his expression calm, his gaze fixed on Peterson. "Sergeant, your officer has been illegally detaining my wife at her own residence for the past 14 minutes. He has accused her of trespassing, refused to verify her identity, and threatened her with arrest based on a fabricated 911 call." He gestured toward Miller, not with anger, but with the dispassionate air of a man stating incontrovertible facts for the official record. Miller's world, which had been cracking since the moment the judge's name was spoken, now shattered into a million irreparable pieces. The external validation was here. It was absolute. Sergeant Peterson did not look at Judge Chen for another second.
His focus, now cold and sharp as a shard of glass, pivoted directly to Officer Ryan Miller. The entire exchange is captured from 3 distinct angles. Miller's own body cam showing Peterson's face hardening into a mask of grim duty. Peterson's body cam showing Miller's face now ashen and slack with the full, crushing realization of his career's end. And the silent, wide-angle CCTV footage which depicted the tableau of justice being swiftly and irrevocably rebalanced. The sergeant's voice, recorded with crystal clarity on all audio feeds, was devoid of any camaraderie. It was the voice of a system purging a fatal error. "Miller," he commanded, his tone leaving no room for negotiation or explanation. "Hand me your firearm, now." The order hung in the air, a public and humiliating stripping of the very symbol of his power. Miller's hands trembled visibly as he complied, his movements clumsy and robotic. He unclipped his service weapon from its holster and presented it to the sergeant, grip first, as per department protocol, the muscle memory of his training a cruel ghost in the midst of his professional death. The heavy piece of metal was transferred from his hand to Peterson's, a tangible exchange of authority. "Your badge and your radio," Peterson continued, his voice relentless. The sound of Velcro ripping as Miller tore the badge from his chest was unnaturally loud in the sudden quiet, a final, pathetic sound of his identity being undone. He handed over the radio, severing his connection to the force he had so arrogantly misrepresented. Peterson didn't even glance at the items, instead passing them to the other officer who had arrived with him, before turning his full, unblinking attention back to Miller. "You will place your hands behind your back. You will turn around and walk to the back of my patrol car. You will not speak another word until you are instructed to do so by internal affairs. Do you understand me, officer?" He pointedly used the title one last time, not as a sign of respect, but to emphasize the code of conduct Miller had so spectacularly violated. Miller could only manage a single choked nod, his throat too tight to form words. As he was led away, disarmed and disgraced, the flashing lights that had been his tool of intimidation now served only to illuminate his complete and utter downfall. Dr. Reed stood perfectly still beside her husband, her composure never once wavering. She did not watch him with triumph, but with the quiet, profound finality of a procedure successfully concluded. The system Miller thought he commanded had turned on him with terrifying efficiency, and his ruin was just beginning. The only question that remained was how meticulously the next phase of his destruction would be documented. The aftermath of Officer Ryan Miller's public unraveling was not a chaotic spectacle, but a quiet, methodical dismantling of a life and career built on a foundation of prejudice. As Sergeant Peterson's patrol car pulled away, its taillights disappearing down the tree-lined street, the flashing emergency lights were extinguished, plunging the cul-de-sac back into its intended tranquility. The only sounds were the soft closing of a garage door and the distant hum of the city. For Dr. Evelyn Reed and Judge David Chin, the incident was over. For Ryan Miller, the consequences were just beginning, a cascade of ruin that would be as meticulously documented as his initial transgression. The internal affairs investigation was a mere formality, a procedural necessity in the face of incontrovertible proof. The process, which typically takes weeks, was concluded in under 48 hours. The primary evidence consisted of 3 digital files: the complete, unedited footage from Miller's own Axon body cam, the high-definition stream from Sergeant Peterson's body cam, and the multi-angle recordings from the Willow Creek Lane Homeowners Association CCTV system. There were no conflicting testimonies to reconcile, no gray areas to debate. The video was the sole witness, and its testimony was absolute. The investigative report, a document of 27 pages, concluded that Miller had violated no fewer than 6 key articles of the Atlanta Police Department's Code of Conduct, including Article 4, Section 11 regarding traffic stop protocol, Article 5, Section 3 concerning abuse of authority, and Article 7, Section 2, the Department's zero-tolerance policy on discriminatory behavior or racial profiling. His fabricated report of a trespassing call was cited as an act of moral turpitude, an attempt to create a false legal pretext for an illegal stop, effectively using the apparatus of the law to commit a crime. His termination was summary and immediate. He was not offered the chance to resign, he was fired. The official letter of dismissal cited gross misconduct, prejudicial to the good order and discipline of the department. With that single sentence, his annual salary of $95,000 ceased. His health and dental benefits were terminated at the end of the month. Most devastatingly, his 10 years of service were nullified, vaporizing a pension plan that, upon retirement, would have been valued at over $1 million. His name was immediately added to the Georgia Peace Officer Standards and Training Council's statewide decertification database, a permanent black mark ensuring he could never again work as a law enforcement officer anywhere in the state. Concurrently, the civil proceedings began. Dr. Reed's legal team filed a lawsuit against the city of Atlanta, citing violations under 42 U.S. Code Section 1983, which provides a cause of action for the deprivation of civil rights under the color of law. The complaint detailed the violation of her Fourth Amendment rights against unreasonable seizure and her 14th Amendment right to equal protection. The city's legal department, upon reviewing the video evidence, recognized the absolute indefensibility of their position. A protracted public trial would be a public relations disaster, and a jury, presented with the footage of Miller's calm, professional victim and his own escalating, baseless aggression, would likely return a verdict far exceeding any potential settlement. The city's risk management division calculated the potential financial exposure and acted swiftly. An out-of-court settlement was reached in a record 30 days. The final figure was exactly $3,500,000, a sum paid by the city's taxpayers to cover the cost of a single officer's prejudice. Dr. Reed, in a public statement, announced that a significant portion of the settlement would be used to establish a scholarship fund at Emory for minority students entering the medical and nursing fields. Meanwhile, Ryan Miller's ostracism was complete. He was a pariah, his name and face synonymous with the viral video clips that played on local and national news cycles. Former colleagues no longer returned his calls. His attempts to find work in the private sector, even as a low-level security guard, were fruitless. The decertification on his record was an insurmountable barrier. The final crushing blow came 3 months later, when the Fulton County District Attorney's Office announced it was pressing criminal charges against him for filing a false report and violation of oath by a public officer. The man who had wielded the threat of prison with such casual cruelty now faced the very real prospect of becoming an inmate himself. His downfall was not a tragedy. It was a simple mathematical equation. His bigotry was the variable, and the irrefutable, unblinking eye of the camera solved for X, where X equaled his total and complete ruin. Did he ever reflect on the fact that the tools of his authority became the instruments of his destruction? The record is silent. It only shows the consequence, a karmic bill delivered and paid in full.